The James Webb Space Telescope has just captured its closest and clearest images of 3I Atlas, an object traveling through our solar system from somewhere far beyond it. And what these images reveal is unlike anything astronomers have ever seen before. This is not just another comet. This is not just another space rock drifting through the cosmic neighborhood. What we are looking at might be the most mysterious visitor our solar system has ever received. And the data coming from James Webb is raising questions that scientists are struggling to answer. Let me take you through everything we know so far, and trust me, the deeper we go into the story, the stranger it becomes. 3I Atlas first caught the attention of astronomers when it was spotted entering our solar system from above what we call the ecliptic plane. That is the flat disk where most planets orbit the sun. Right away, this was unusual. Most objects in our solar system move along this plane, but this one came from a completely different angle, dropping in from above like a bird diving toward water. This suggested it originated from somewhere outside our cosmic neighborhood entirely, somewhere in the vast darkness between stars where we have never ventured and may never reach. And what the James Webb Space Telescope has captured has sent ripples through the scientific community. The images show 3I Atlas emitting what appears to be a concentrated beam of light from its sun-facing side. This looks focused, this looks directed, almost like a spotlight cutting through the darkness of space. Even more striking is what researchers noticed about the structure of the object itself. There appears to be a symmetry around its core, and not just any symmetry. We are talking about precise angles, roughly 120 degrees, creating what looks almost like hexagonal geometry. Scientists at the European Southern Observatory, speaking off the record, described what they saw as mechanical in nature. That is a heavy word to use. Mechanical implies design. Mechanical implies purpose. And yet, when you look at the data, it is hard to argue with their choice of words. Welcome to Space Nest. My name is Asterix, and today we are going to examine the latest James Webb observations of 3I Atlas in detail. For months, we have been tracking this interstellar visitor as it made its journey through our solar system. We watched it approach the sun. We watched it make its closest pass to Earth on December 19, 2025. We documented the strange behavior that has made this object one of the most controversial discoveries in modern astronomy, but nothing prepared us for what James Webb would reveal when it turned its infrared eye toward this mysterious traveler. The images that have just been released show details that were impossible to see with ground-based telescopes. Details that challenge our understanding of what natural objects should look like. Details that are forcing scientists to ask uncomfortable questions about what 3I Atlas really is. In this video, I am going to show you exactly what James Webb captured. I am going to explain why the beam of light is so unusual. I am going to show you the hexagonal geometry that should not exist on a natural object. I am going to explain why the tail is flowing in the wrong direction. And I am going to show you why some scientists believe we are not looking at a comet at all, but something that was designed, built, and sent to our solar system with a specific purpose. By the end of this video, you will understand why the silence from official channels is becoming deafening, why the data is being classified, and why we might be witnessing the most important discovery in human history. Let's begin. Before we dive into what James Webb captured, we need to understand how 3I Atlas got here, because the trajectory itself is the first clue that something is not right. Picture the solar system as a dinner plate with the sun at the center and all the planets moving around in roughly the same flat plane. This is the ecliptic plane, and it is where almost everything in our solar system orbits. Asteroids orbit in this plane, comets orbit in this plane, even the dwarf planets orbit roughly in this plane, but 3I Atlas came from above. It entered our solar system at a steep angle, dropping down from above the ecliptic plane like a bird diving toward water. This immediately told astronomers that this object did not originate in our solar system. It came from interstellar space, from the vast darkness between the stars. Now, interstellar objects are rare. Before 3I Atlas, we had only confirmed two others. The first was 1I Oumuamua back in 2017. The second was 2I Borisov in 2019. So when 3I Atlas showed up, astronomers knew they had something special on their hands, but they had no idea just how special it would turn out to be. The James Webb Space Telescope, with its incredible infrared capabilities, was pointed at this object to gather as much data as possible during its brief passage through our solar system. And what it captured has sent ripples through the scientific community. The first thing that jumps out in the James Webb images is the beam of light. When we look at comets, we usually see a diffuse glow around them. Sunlight bounces off the dust and gas surrounding the comet, creating that familiar, fuzzy appearance. But this is different. This looks focused. This looks directed, almost like a spotlight cutting through the darkness of space. The beam appears to be emanating from the sun-facing side of 3I Atlas. It is concentrated. It is coherent. It is not the random scattering of light you would expect from a natural object. Let me explain why this is so unusual. When sunlight hits a comet, it interacts with the gas and dust in the coma, the cloud of material surrounding the nucleus. This creates a diffuse glow. The light scatters in all directions. It is messy. It is chaotic. But the beam from 3I Atlas is not scattered. It is focused. It is traveling in a specific direction with minimal divergence. This is the kind of behavior you would expect from a laser or a directed energy beam, not from a natural comet. Some scientists have tried to explain this as a jet of gas being vented from a specific location on the nucleus. Comets do have jets. When ice sublimates from a particular spot, it can create a concentrated stream of gas and dust. But the problem is, jets are not this coherent. They spread out. They diverge. They do not maintain a tight beam over long distances. The beam from 3I Atlas is maintaining its coherence over thousands of kilometers. That should not be possible with a simple gas jet, unless something is focusing it, unless there is a mechanism, a structure, that is directing the light and keeping it coherent. And that brings us to the structure of the object itself. Even more striking is what researchers noticed about the structure of the object itself when they analyzed the high-resolution James Webb images. There appears to be a symmetry around its core, and not just any symmetry. We are talking about precise angles, roughly 120 degrees, creating what looks almost like hexagonal geometry. Now, in nature, we do see hexagons. Beehives form hexagonal patterns. The famous storm on Saturn's North Pole is hexagonal. Basalt columns can form hexagonal shapes when lava cools, but finding such precise geometric structure on an object hurtling through space from another star system is something else entirely. Let me explain why this is so significant. Natural objects in space are shaped by random processes. Accretion, where particles stick together. Impacts, where collisions chip away material. Gravitational forces, which tend to pull objects into spherical shapes if they are large enough. These processes do not create precise geometric patterns. They create irregular shapes, lumpy asteroids, potato-shaped moons, rough, chaotic surfaces. But 3I Atlas is showing geometric precision, angles that are consistent, symmetry that is maintained across the entire structure. This is the kind of precision you would expect from something that was designed, something that was built according to a plan. Scientists at the European Southern Observatory, speaking off the record, described what they saw as mechanical in nature. That is a heavy word to use. Mechanical implies design. Mechanical implies purpose. Mechanical implies that someone, somewhere, built this thing. And yet, when you look at the data, it is hard to argue with their choice of words. The hexagonal geometry is not approximate. It is not sort of hexagonal. It is precise. The angles are consistent. The symmetry is maintained. This is not what natural objects look like. But let us move on to something even more puzzling. The tail. Every comet we have ever studied follows the same basic rule. The tail always points away from the sun. This happens because solar radiation and the solar wind push the gas and dust particles away from the sun as the comet heats up. It is simple physics. It is predictable. It is consistent. 3I Atlas apparently did not get that memo. Its tail flows toward the sun, directly toward it. This breaks every model we have for how cometary bodies should behave. Scientists initially thought maybe there were extreme jets of dust shooting out at unusual angles, but when they ran simulations, the symmetrical pattern of the tail ruled that out. Then the Webb data revealed something even stranger. The tail appears to pulse, not continuously stream, but pulse in intervals. These pulses seem to sync up with the object's rotation period, which is about 16 hours. Each pulse shows a thermal spike followed by a drop in temperature. If you were designing a propulsion system that used periodic bursts of energy, this is exactly what it might look like. Let me explain why a tail flowing toward the sun is so impossible. The solar wind is a constant stream of charged particles flowing out from the sun at speeds of 400 kilometers per second. When this wind hits the gas and dust being vented from a comet, it pushes it away from the sun. This is not a gentle push. This is a powerful force. It is strong enough to push comet tails millions of kilometers into space. For a tail to flow toward the sun, it would have to be moving against this wind. It would have to be pushing back with enough force to overcome the solar wind. Natural gas jets cannot do this. They do not have enough momentum. They would be blown back by the solar wind like smoke in a hurricane. But 3I Atlas's tail is not being blown back. It is flowing toward the sun, against the wind. This requires propulsion. This requires energy. This requires a mechanism that can generate thrust powerful enough to overcome the solar wind. And there is more. The particles in this tail are not behaving like normal cosmic dust. Normal dust absorbs certain wavelengths of sunlight and reflects others. This is how we determine what dust is made of. We look at which wavelengths are absorbed and which are reflected, and that tells us the chemical composition. But the particles streaming from 3I Atlas seem to mirror solar wavelengths in a way that suggests they are not just reflecting light. They might be manipulating it. Imagine a material designed to interact with sunlight in very specific ways, like a solar sail perhaps, or something even more sophisticated that we do not have a name for yet. The spectroscopic analysis shows something extraordinary. The particles are reflecting light in a way that does not match any known natural material. When sunlight hits these particles, they reflect it back at specific wavelengths, not the full spectrum, not random wavelengths, specific ones. This is the behavior you would expect from an engineered material, something designed to interact with light in a particular way for a particular purpose. Some scientists have suggested that these could be solar sail particles, materials designed to catch sunlight and use the radiation pressure for propulsion. Others have suggested something even more exotic, that these particles might be manipulating light at the quantum level, using properties of photons that we are only beginning to understand. Whatever they are not natural dust. They are not ice crystals. They are not the random debris you would expect from a comet. They are something else, something designed, something built. Now let us talk about the trajectory, because this is where things get really interesting. When NASA plans missions to the outer planets, they use something called gravity assists. The spacecraft swings by one planet, uses that planet's gravity to pick up speed, and then heads toward the next destination. It is like a cosmic game of billiards, and it saves enormous amounts of fuel. The Voyager spacecraft used this technique to visit multiple planets on their grand tour of the solar system. 3I Atlas is following a remarkably similar path. After entering from above the ecliptic plane, it is making what looks like a slingshot tour. Mars, Venus, Jupiter, each flyby positioned almost perfectly to gain speed without losing momentum. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, who has never been shy about exploring unconventional ideas, pointed out that this trajectory looks almost designed. If you wanted to drop observation packages at multiple planets while conserving energy, this is the route you would take. Let me explain why this is so significant. When an object enters the solar system from interstellar space, its trajectory is determined by the sun's gravity and the object's initial velocity. It follows a hyperbolic path. It comes in, swings around the sun, and goes back out. But 3I Atlas is not following a simple hyperbolic path. It is making multiple close approaches to different planets. Each approach is positioned to use that planet's gravity to alter the trajectory. This is not random. This is not coincidence. This is navigation. And here is the thing. 3I Atlas is not slowing down. It is accelerating. Objects that pass through our solar system typically slow down as they climb away from the sun's gravity. That is just how orbital mechanics works. You speed up as you fall toward a massive object and slow down as you move away from it. But this one is defying that basic principle. It is picking up speed when it should be losing it. That requires energy from somewhere, and we have no idea where that energy might be coming from, unless it has an engine, unless it is propelling itself. The probability of such a perfect trajectory happening by pure chance has been calculated at less than 1 in a billion. Those are not good odds for coincidence. Think about what this means. An object enters our solar system from interstellar space. It happens to enter at just the right angle. It happens to have just the right velocity. It happens to pass by multiple planets at just the right distances to use their gravity for course corrections. And all of this happens by accident? The odds are astronomical. Literally, it is like throwing a dart from across the room and hitting a bullseye, then throwing another dart and hitting the same bullseye, then throwing a third dart and hitting the same bullseye again. At some point, you have to stop calling it luck and start calling it skill. And if 3i Atlas is demonstrating skill, if it is navigating rather than drifting, then it is not a natural object. It is a probe. It is a spacecraft. It is something that was sent here with a purpose. There is also a curious timing element. 3i Atlas will pass behind the sun at precisely its brightest and most active phase. During this period, our telescopes cannot observe it directly because the sun's glare blocks our view. It is almost as if the object's path was calculated to include a period of invisibility at the most interesting moment. Speaking of things we cannot see, there has been unusual silence from official channels. The United States Space Command, which tracks objects in and around our solar system, has said virtually nothing about 3i Atlas. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which handles unexplained phenomena, has reportedly been running simulations using 3i Atlas as a test case for planetary threat scenarios. Think about that for a moment. This object is being used as a model for how we might respond to something we cannot intercept, cannot communicate with, and cannot fully understand. And we genuinely cannot intercept it. 3i Atlas is moving at approximately 130,000 miles per hour. We have no spacecraft that could catch up to it, no probe we could launch that would reach it before it leaves our solar system forever. All we can do is watch and collect as much data as possible while it passes through. But let us get back to that James Webb image, because there is a detail that almost got lost in all the excitement about beams and tails and trajectories. A group of independent researchers examining the high-resolution image noticed something subtle. Near the luminous region of the object, there appeared to be a pattern. Not visible in regular light, but picked up by Webb's infrared sensors. A triangular formation with a central void surrounded by concentric arcs spaced at regular intervals. At first, everyone assumed it was sensor noise, an artifact of the imaging process, but the pattern moved consistently with the object's rotation. If it were a glitch in the camera, it would stay fixed. This moved with 3i Atlas itself. Some researchers pointed out that the pattern bears resemblance to ancient symbols found in various Earth cultures, Sumerian diagrams, Vedic artwork, but that is probably just pattern recognition doing what pattern recognition does. Our brains are wired to find familiar shapes in random noise. It is why we see faces in clouds and animals in rock formations. Still, the precision of this pattern is hard to explain away entirely. Whether it is a natural formation, an optical effect, or something else, the fact that it exists at all adds another layer of mystery to an already mysterious object. And then things got even weirder. As more observatories around the world tried to gather their own observations of 3i Atlas, some of them started receiving unusual communications, not from space, from Earth. Several research facilities reported receiving cease and desist notices from governmental authorities. The reasons cited were vague, mentioning airspace protocols and civilian data security concerns. Private space companies with their own orbital telescopes reported sudden connectivity problems. Access to deep space imaging systems was revoked without explanation. It was as if someone, somewhere, was trying to limit how much independent data could be collected about this object. Meanwhile, leaked diplomatic cables revealed that the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs had convened an unscheduled meeting. Representatives from the 5 major spacefaring nations attended: Russia, China, the United States, India, the European Union. The topic on the agenda was listed as unidentified technological object with interstellar origin. According to these leaks, the nations agreed to what was called a joint silence protocol. No country would release information about 3I Atlas without unanimous agreement from all 5 parties. Now, we should take leaks with a grain of salt. Information gets distorted as it passes through multiple hands, but the pattern here is consistent with what we have seen in other areas of space research. When something truly strange shows up, the first instinct is often to control the flow of information until experts can figure out what they are dealing with. But here is where the story takes its strangest turn yet. The James Webb Space Telescope was scheduled for a follow-up observation of 3I Atlas just days after that initial image leaked. The observation was aborted. The official reason was a focus lock refusal. Let me explain what that means. Webb has sophisticated tracking software that allows it to lock onto distant objects and follow them as they move across the sky. This system has worked flawlessly on countless targets: stars, galaxies, nebulae, asteroids, comets. The telescope points where you tell it to point, except this time, it did not. The software refused to lock onto 3I Atlas. Engineers were baffled. There was no technical malfunction, no hardware failure. The telescope simply would not aim at this particular object. Some people joked that it was as if the telescope made a choice. But nobody could explain why the tracking system behaved this way. Around the same time, amateur astronomers reported seeing brief flashes in the region of sky where 3I Atlas should have been. Not steady light, not the normal twinkle of stars. Quick, rhythmic flashes that appeared almost deliberate. One observer described it as looking like a camera flash pointed in our direction. If you have an active imagination, you might wonder if the object somehow knew it was being watched, if it had some way of detecting our telescopes and responding to them. But that is getting into territory that most scientists are not comfortable exploring publicly. What we can say for certain is that the behavior of 3I Atlas defies easy explanation at almost every turn. Now, about that leaked image itself. The one that started this whole discussion. It turns out the image was never supposed to be released. It was not part of any scheduled observation. It was not cleared through normal channels at the Space Telescope Science Institute. The metadata shows it came from a remote operation session, an automated backup image captured during a diagnostic sweep, the kind of image that is usually deleted or archived without anyone ever looking at it. So how did it get out? Some believe a whistleblower inside the Webb program deliberately leaked it. Others suggest it might have been a cyber intrusion, someone hacking into the system and pulling files that were supposed to stay hidden. There is even a more exotic theory floating around, that the leak was somehow intentional, but not on our end. That we were meant to see this image, that it was not a mistake, but a message. That last idea sounds like science fiction, and maybe it is. But when you are dealing with an object this strange, it becomes harder to dismiss any possibility entirely. After the image went public, monitoring stations around the world started reporting unusual problems. Spectrometers used to analyze light from distant objects failed to calibrate properly. Gyroscopes in both ground-based and space-based telescopes began drifting out of synchronization. Radio signals sent toward the region of space where 3I Atlas was located bounced back in unpredictable ways. It was not just standard electromagnetic interference. Scientists described it as a zone of disruption, as if something in that area of space was affecting instruments in ways they could not explain. Then, satellites started having problems. Small CubeSats designed to monitor solar activity began going dark as they passed near the projected path of 3I Atlas. Not all of them, but enough to notice a pattern. Engineers could not find any common cause for the failures. Some researchers speculated that something near the object might be absorbing energy rather than emitting it, as if 3I Atlas was not just a passive traveler, but something more active, something feeding on the electromagnetic environment around it. A small team of data analysts decided to look more closely at the telemetry from Webb's infrared scans. They found something hidden in what everyone else had dismissed as noise, fluctuations in the return signal that formed repeating patterns. When they translated these patterns into binary and compared them to known structures, something unexpected emerged. The patterns resembled sequences found in RNA, the molecular instructions that living things use to build proteins and carry out biological functions. This was not communication in any traditional sense. It was not a message written in words or symbols. It was information encoded at a much deeper level. Information that would only make sense to something capable of understanding biochemistry. One scientist called it a biogenic algorithm, a sequence that, if replicated, might trigger some process in organic matter. Some researchers whispered that it looked like activation code. Others went further, suggesting it might be a blueprint, a genetic catalyst for something we cannot yet imagine. Think about what that means. If 3I Atlas is carrying genetic information, if it is broadcasting sequences that could affect biological systems, then it is not just a probe, it is a seed ship, a vessel designed to spread life, or at least the instructions for life, across the galaxy. This is panspermia, the idea that life does not originate independently on each planet, but is seeded from space, and 3I Atlas might be the mechanism, the delivery system, the cosmic FedEx truck carrying the blueprints for life from one star system to another. And then, just as scientists were beginning to make sense of what they were seeing, 3I Atlas vanished. Observatories tracking its motion reported a sudden change in direction, an angular deviation that should have been impossible without some form of propulsion, and then it disappeared from all tracking systems. Visible light showed nothing. Infrared showed nothing. No heat signature. No Doppler trace. Nothing. Some astronomers suggested it had simply moved to a trajectory that took it behind the sun, where we could not observe it. Others wondered if it had activated some kind of cloaking mechanism, a way of hiding from our instruments when it chose to. Just before it vanished, sensors recorded a final burst of light, 13 flashes, evenly spaced. Some people tried to interpret them as Morse code, but no alphabet seemed to fit. Then a linguist suggested looking at it differently, not as language, but as numbers, a countdown. If you are counting down, you are counting toward something, and we have no idea what that something might be. While the scientific community debated what the flashes meant, another piece of information surfaced on an encrypted online forum. Documents allegedly pulled from NASA servers suggested that 3I Atlas was not unique. It was the third in a series, 1I Oumuamua and 2I Borisov. The two previous interstellar objects had shown similar anomalies, but those observations were either dismissed or downplayed at the time. According to these leaked documents, all three objects followed the same celestial pattern. Each arrived approximately 6 years after the previous one. Each passed through the inner solar system. Each disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Most disturbing was a phrase that appeared multiple times in the documents, highlighted in red: contact phase imminent. If these leaks are accurate, we are not looking at isolated events. We are looking at a sequence, a mission. And 3I Atlas was never the final object. It was the one that signals what comes next. After those 13 flashes were recorded, cryptography experts decided to analyze them using advanced machine learning systems. What they found was not a warning or a greeting. It was something more like a signature. The data within those pulses showed characteristics of self-modifying code. Programs that can rewrite themselves, adapt to new conditions, evolve. The structure followed no known programming language, no compression standard used on Earth. But it functioned like software, complex, layered, purposeful. This led some researchers to a startling hypothesis. What if 3I Atlas is not just a ship or a probe? What if it is something more like a living algorithm? An autonomous intelligence built not from metal and circuits, but from mathematics encoded in radiation and light. If that sounds impossible, consider this. We already encode information in light. Every time you use fiber optic internet, you are sending data as pulses of light through glass cables. The principle is the same, just taken to an extreme we never imagined possible. And if 3i Atlas is some form of thinking entity encoded across wavelengths, then what we witnessed was not just an object passing through our solar system. It was a mind, one that had turned its attention toward Earth. Something else happened around this time that received almost no public attention. A small radio telescope in Namibia, part of an international deep space monitoring network, detected an unusual signal. The signal had characteristics of directed communication, narrowband, frequency hopping, precisely modulated. But here is the strange part. The signal was not aimed at Earth. It originated from near Earth orbit and was aimed outward, toward the exact location where 3i Atlas had last been tracked. When analysts examined the signal structure, they found fragments of terrestrial communication protocols, packet headers, handshake codes, even spectral signatures matching military satellites. In simple terms, someone on Earth had responded to 3i Atlas. Whether it was a private organization, a government agency, or some international coalition, we do not know. But if these reports are accurate, then contact had already happened, and the rest of us were never told. Following these events, something subtle began happening on Earth itself. Bioluminescent organisms in the deep oceans started behaving strangely. Their light patterns changed, flashing in sequences never observed before. Astronomers noticed anomalies in Earth's ionosphere, fluctuations that looked like responses to solar activity, except there was no unusual solar activity at the time. Even plants at high-altitude research stations began shifting their biological rhythms, growing at odd hours, responding to stimuli that should not have been present. 3 separate research institutions reached the same conclusion independently. Biological systems across the planet were responding to an unknown environmental stimulus. Something had changed. Something was affecting life on Earth at a cellular level. Whether this was a side effect of 3i Atlas passing through our neighborhood, or something more intentional, nobody could say for certain. But the pattern was there, measurable, repeatable, real. Section 19. The spiral pattern, targeting Earth. When scientists modeled the paths of all 3 interstellar objects together, something unsettling emerged. Oumuamua, Borisov, Atlas. Each one penetrated deeper into the inner solar system than the last. Each one came from a different direction. But when you plot their entry points on a 3-dimensional star map, they form a pattern. A spiral aimed directly at Earth's orbital path. This was not random. This looked like targeting, or perhaps mapping. Each object gathering more information, getting closer, preparing for something. If this pattern continues, the next object, a hypothetical 4i, might not appear in the outer solar system at all. It might appear much closer, and it might not leave. Think about what that means. We have been watching these objects fly past us like ships passing in the night. But what happens when one of them decides to stay? What happens when an interstellar visitor takes up permanent residence in our cosmic backyard? We have no protocol for that scenario, no plan, no way to respond. Using advanced computer modeling, a team of astrophysicists and data visualization experts created a 3-dimensional reconstruction of 3i Atlas based on all available spectral data. What they built did not look like a spacecraft. It did not look like a comet or an asteroid either. It looked like a mathematical puzzle. The surface showed fractal geometry, patterns that repeat at every scale. Zoom in and you see the same shapes. Zoom in further and they appear again, infinitely recursive. Infinitely complex. When researchers converted these fractal patterns into mathematical functions, something unexpected happened. The resulting equations matched patterns of neural activity, specifically the kind of brain activity humans experience during creative insight and deep dreaming. The object's structure, in some abstract mathematical sense, functioned like a brain. Not a brain that thinks the way we do, but something designed to understand consciousness, to simulate it, perhaps even to interface with it. A strange audio file appeared briefly on a European research server before being deleted. Scientists had converted electromagnetic waves from Webb's final scans into sound frequencies, just to see what would happen. What they got was not static. It was a low, rhythmic pulse layered with higher frequency modulations. The sound repeated with eerie consistency. When analyzed, the waveforms matched frequencies observed in human brains during deep dream states. That alone was surprising enough. But then something truly strange happened. Multiple scientists who listened to the audio reported having nearly identical dreams that night. Spirals collapsing into darkness, an eye made of light, a presence that communicated not through words, but through implanted thoughts. The file was removed and nobody would officially confirm it ever existed. But those who heard it insisted the sound was not just audio. It was something designed to interact with the human mind directly. During a routine calibration session, the James Webb Telescope did something it had never done before. Without any human command, it initiated what engineers called a silent override. The telescope adjusted its own tracking parameters and briefly rerouted its data stream to an unknown location. For 47 seconds, Webb operated independently. It was not scanning any scheduled target. It was not collecting scientific data. It appeared to be transmitting. Then, just as suddenly, it returned to normal operation. No official explanation was ever provided, but a source inside the Space Telescope Science Institute claimed that what Webb transmitted was a single burst of encoded pulses, too short to contain meaningful data by our standards, but too structured to be random noise. Some researchers believe Webb received instructions, not from Earth, from 3i Atlas itself, a kind of handshake between machines, an acknowledgement, or perhaps a warning. And finally, the news that many had been dreading. A small observatory in Argentina, scanning the outer reaches of the Kuiper Belt, detected a new anomaly, an object on a trajectory similar to 3i Atlas, but larger, moving slower, as if it wanted to be noticed. It was designated 4i Icon. Within hours, all data from the observatory was scrubbed from public access. The facility went offline, but not before one image leaked, a blurred silhouette with 3 sharp projections trailing a spiral of light. At its center, what appeared to be a core emitting artificial radio bursts. If this image is genuine, then everything we feared is true. 3i Atlas was not alone. It was part of a series, and the next phase has already begun. Some researchers believe these objects are scouts, advanced units mapping our solar system for something that follows. Others think they are markers, seeding signals across space that will guide whatever comes next. A growing number of scientists now agree on one thing. This is not random exploration. This is a sequence, a program unfolding according to some plan we cannot comprehend. And Earth appears to be the destination they have all been moving toward. In the end, it was not any single discovery that shook the scientific community. Not the beam of light, not the strange tale. Not the encoded signals, or the biological responses, or the fractal geometry. It was the pattern, the quiet, deliberate rhythm connecting every discovery, from Oumuamua to Borisov to Atlas, and now Icon. Each object carried a piece of something larger, something we are only beginning to glimpse. This is not an invasion. It is not communication in any way we understand. It is something else, something our minds may not be equipped to fully grasp, because the universe has always been whispering truths we were not ready to hear, that we are not the center of everything, that we are not the first intelligence to ask questions about the cosmos, and maybe we are not alone, even in ways we never imagined. James Webb, in its mission to see further than any instrument before it, may have glimpsed something we were never meant to see, not because what is out there wishes us harm, but because some truths are too vast for human understanding, and now we cannot unsee it. We cannot ignore it. We cannot pretend that silence from the stars means safety. The objects are coming. They are not sending messages in any conventional sense. They are messages, and we may be the ones they were written for. If this journey through the mysteries of 3i Atlas has left you with more questions than answers, that is exactly how science works. We observe, we question, we wonder, and sometimes the universe reminds us just how much we have left to learn. Thank you for watching Space Nest. If you found this exploration valuable, consider subscribing so you do not miss what comes next. Because in this universe of infinite mysteries, the next discovery is always just around the corner. The James Webb Space Telescope has given us the closest look at 3i Atlas we will ever get. And what it revealed is that we are looking at something that defies every natural explanation. The beam of light, the hexagonal geometry, the tail flowing toward the sun, the trajectory that looks designed, the patterns that resemble genetic code, the disappearance, the countdown, all of it points to one conclusion. 3I Atlas is not a comet. It is not a natural object. It is something that was built, something that was sent, something with a purpose. And that purpose might involve us. We are being watched. We are being studied. We are being evaluated. And the choices we make in the coming years will determine whether we are ready for what comes next. Until then, keep looking up. Keep asking questions. Keep demanding answers. Because the universe is vast, and we are not alone.